A former AEW talent claims that they are about to sue the company, which could cause some problems for Tony Khan and everyone at the head of All Elite Wrestling. We're going to talk about who this talent was, what's the background here, and what this could mean for AEW. We're also going to talk about a pretty big debut that took the world by storm this week in WWE and what it means for WWE and TNA's partnership as things move forward. All that and much more coming up right here in this video. So be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. All right, let's first talk about this news. So Kevin Kelly was fired from AEW this past March. That was to do with some backstage goings on, is how I'm going to describe it, between himself and Ian Riccaboni. Basically, the claim from Kelly is that Ian Riccaboni disparaged him backstage. He went to AEW HR to go handle the situation. He believes that it was not handled correctly, led to eventually a demotion for him from Collision and his eventual firing from All Elite Wrestling. And he went on Eric Bischoff's podcast, of course, has been quite contentious with Tony Khan in the past. He went on Wise Choices with Eric Bischoff, and he was asked if he was planning to sue AEW by Bischoff. And he basically said, yeah, of course. That is a quote from the podcast. He also had much more to say that we're going to get into. But first, let's talk about what this means. Obviously, whenever someone is fired, there are going to be, hard feelings. There's going to be situations for AEW, WWE, with every company where you're going to have disgruntled talent who don't like the way things ended. I think CM Punk is someone who could fall also in that category of someone who left AEW with a very sour taste in his mouth. It seems to be the case if you go and listen to everything that Kevin Kelly has said. He claims that Ian Riccaboni badmouthed him, and it's basically to do with this movie that, either may or may not be peddling some sort of QAnon conspiracy. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on that. It's been kind of debated about prominently. Kelly, for his part, has defended his stance that it was not about some QAnon conspiracy, but instead about trafficking. And you can go listen to his full interview with Eric Bischoff to get more tidbits about that backstory. But the claim is that he was disparaged, that he was libeled by Riccaboni, and that, AEW basically mistreated him on the way out. And he believes that he wasn't fired for the right reasons. So that is Kevin Kelly's side of the story. As far as, what this means, I mean, look, until a lawsuit is filed, which it has not been, this means a little bit of nothing. And I don't mean that Kevin Kelly could not have a claim. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to negate or even defend anything that Kevin Kelly is saying. But the reality is, until he takes that step to actually sue AEW, this really is just a case of another AEW disgruntled employee who, obviously things did not work out between him and AEW. He was brought in to do Collision. It was pretty apparent early on that they did not see him in that spot. It was pretty evident early on that Kevin Kelly maybe was not ready for AEW Collision. If you go back and look at some of his work in the early days of Collision, like the wrestling was great. Everyone agreed Nigel McGuinness was great. Kevin Kelly was really good when he was on, but when he wasn't, it wasn't great. And I think that's part of the reason why it's believed that they brought in Tony Schiavone to kind of help steady the ship a little bit on commentary, provide another voice there, and, kind of lead that commentary crew. Now, obviously, it is Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness who do that. But that wasn't all that Kevin Kelly had to say on this podcast. He also went on to talk about Tony Khan as a wrestling promoter and as a boss. Here is what he had to say there. These are 3 separate quotes. Quote, he's got good people around him he doesn't utilize. His vision of what wrestling is, for me, works best on a small scale. People always wonder, why did PWG stay small? Well, they knew, I think. They knew if they went big, it would go stale fast. Went on to say, Tony Khan wants to appeal to a niche audience with his vision of wrestling, but he thinks he can convince people to go to watch on a grand scale. The other thing he's done, he's made himself the face of the company. So as you can see there, Kevin Kelly, no fan of Tony Khan, nor his booking, nor the way that he views wrestling. And look, it has been very highly criticized. Like, Tony Khan has been criticized ever since he stepped foot into wrestling as a booker. AEW has been heavily criticized as a niche product for a niche audience that, whatever, isn't marketable or what have you. I think there is legitimacy to some of the claims in there. I think there's 100% legitimacy to the claim that, Tony Khan maybe leans a little bit too much into the quote-unquote niche audience. There's legitimacy to the claim that maybe his product, like, it has grown stale over time. And I think both of those things can be true. Look, as far as AEW going stale, compared to where it was in 2020 and 2021, it is true. The product has gotten stale in comparison. It is still a very highly rated show as far as its time slot on Wednesday nights. But reality is they are very far off from where they were from 2021. And ratings are very far off. And it's not just a case of TV ratings, diminishing at a certain rate. The fall off of AEW is something that, they should be concerned about. And that's why you're seeing them try to make Dynamite, bigger than it usually is. That's why you're seeing MJF this past week appearing multiple times. That's why you saw Will Ospreay appearing and with a segment in 2 segments on Dynamite. So you're seeing them kind of lean into their star power and kind of, use that to hopefully build up their ratings. Now, as far as the criticism of it can't work on a large scale, I mean, it is working. That is just a fallacy. And it's something that he was wrong about. It is something that Punk was wrong about as well when he was critiquing AEW, that, they weren't making money or what have you. The reality is that AEW is not necessarily in the business of, selling out arenas. And I'm not trying to say that as a cheeky criticism. I'm just saying it as the truth. Their business model is predicated on television. Their business model is predicated on selling pay-per-views. It is predicated on their television product, the content that they create. So it's very easy for people who I think are coming from a perspective where, attendance mattered way more back in the 2000s and the 90s. It's just true. It mattered way more. It dictated how much the house was going to be. It dictated how much wrestlers on that card were going to get paid. That is no longer the case. Many of these contracts are guaranteed for wrestlers, so they get paid regardless of what happens. And when you factor that in with the insane amount of money that is being thrown around for television and content nowadays, not just in wrestling, but even out of wrestling, just for live television content, AEW is a business that will likely be profitable in the next 5 years. Everyone expects that to be the case. If they are going to get a big TV deal, I believe the number that was reported, and again, I haven't done the math here, but number that was reported is like somewhere above $130 million per year. They're over 5 is going to be profitable for them. So that is good. They're going to be good as far as that goes, and they are going to be a successful business. Like, when you are in an industry, especially as cutthroat and as monopolized as professional wrestling, to be successful at that scale, that's not just small. That is a big scale. That is the challenger brand that Tony Khan talks about. The other criticism there that we should address is the one of Tony Khan kind of making himself more prominent. And it is true. In many cases, Tony Khan has become the face of AEW. And I think part of the reason why they've leaned into it so much is because it works. There is no, look, I'm going to be real with you. It's no mistake that Tony Khan is on the thumbnail of the video that you are watching. It's because it works. People see Tony Khan and they think AEW. That is why all of this has gone the way it has. That's why Tony Khan has been so out front and outspoken about it, because even he understands, like, look, it's another way to market my product. And at the end of the day, as long as Tony Khan is in charge, that is going to be the game. He's going to do everything it takes to market his product, to try to get as many eyeballs as possible. and it is what's gotten them this far. It's going to continue to probably get them into their next TV deal. We'll see what happens, though, with this. Again, Kevin Kelly has not officially launched a lawsuit or filed a lawsuit, against All Elite Wrestling. So we will wait to see what happens there. As we move on to our next topic, Joe Hendry appeared on NXT, shocking the entire wrestling world and adding fuel to the fire of the conversation. Who the hell next is going to be debuting in WWE from NXT and opening up this forbidden door? Another interesting tidbit about Joe Hendry. This is according to Wrestle Ops. Joe Hendry's arrival in WWE last night is now WWE's second most liked video on their official Twitter post WrestleMania 40 season. This is someone, Joe Hendry, by the way, has been busting his butt on the British Indies for years. He made it to TNA. He has a hit song, worldwide hit song, was on top of the charts at one point, and we all believe in Joe Hendry. And I just want to start by saying it could not have happened to a nicer guy. Like Joe Hendry, and you know, from where he's gone, like we all, I think I got first introduced to him when I was watching What Culture Pro Wrestling. And like you could see, like they were pushing him as like one of their major stars, and he had all that star power back then. And to see it culminate in this moment of him being on NXT, like I don't care what you say, that is major. And the fact that people there knew him, that the audience, it resonated with them, that they knew his song when he came out, that shows you the potential that someone like Joe Hendry has in WWE. And I think it is at a certain point his contract will be up, and whether you're WWE or AEW, you are going to want him. And I think WWE right now probably has the better foothold in order to get him through this pipeline they are developing with TNA. But he wasn't the only one who was backstage, at least on NXT this past week from TNA. Frankie Kazarian, AEW original and TNA original as well. Frankie Kazarian was indeed backstage. There was a picture of him with Shawn Michaels. So forbidden doors opening up left and right. We got AEW having a pay-per-view about it every week on NXT, it seems, is a major forbidden door moment. And Joe Hendry even said that he is not done yet, and that they will see him on other shows as well. So opening the door for maybe this TNA partnership to go and expand into the main roster. As far as whether or not that happens, I think is TBD. I think for now they're going to contain all of this to NXT to use it mostly as a bit of a proving ground for some of these talent, because I think the end goal here is get a foothold and create a pipeline for new talent, experienced talent who are on television. Like, let's get some of these people in here. I think that's the end goal with this specific TNA partnership. It's also creating a lot of major buzz for NXT, making it a must-see show, which as they are turning into the latter part of 2024, they're going to need more and more eyeballs on it when they go to the CW. Like, you know, changing channels, usually it's no big deal, but sometimes when you're going to making a major shift like that, it can impact things. So we'll see what happens there, but shout out to Joe Hendry for getting that moment. That was really cool to see. Let me know in the comment section what you guys thought of Joe Hendry and what you guys thought of everything I talked about in this video. Also, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.